All right, welcome to what is going to be the final one of our subtractive synthesis tutorials. This one's going to be a little bit interesting because we're not going to use any MIDI input. This time I'm going to use sequencers, so this is going to be a sequencer-based patch. And specifically, I'm going to use the Seek3 module from VCV, which I have to get out of tags for Mixer, apparently. That might help. There we go. So I'm going to grab one of these Seek3s, and this is a sequencer. I've got 3 rows, which are just going to output CV at whatever tempo is running, and they're going to go to, whatever device I want to send them to. Now, what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to duplicate this. I'm going to have 2 sequencers. And then down here at the very end, we're going to have a mixer. And I'm going to use a mixer. How about the Bog Audio Mix 4, if I can find it, which is kind of my favorite one to use. There it is. So that's the Mix 4. I'm going to send that to a spring verb just for a little bit of fun. Although we're going to turn that all the way down to start. And we'll take dry and wet. We're going to take left to input 1, right to 2, and then I'm going to take the mix out. There it is. And connect that to my audio interface on channels 1 and 2. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create 2 separate things. One is going to be percussion, and one is going to be just a really basic synth voice. So we'll start with the percussion because that's really easy. I'm going to grab a noise module, and then I am going to grab an ADSR. And I do have to use an ADSR that responds to triggers because that is what this sequencer outputs. If I use gate, it might not work. So what we're going to do is we're going to take that, and then we're going to have a filter. And I am just going to use this VCF here. I'm going to send some white noise in to the input. I'm going to send my output of the ADSR to the mix channel 1, output of the filter to the input of channel 1. Then I can play around with my sound. I'm going to take that down. We're going to crank that. And let's see what this sounds like and dial in a nice percussive sound. Okay, so at this point I need to switch this over to trigger mode. And that works, and I can mute it, or I could play around with the filter and figure out how to improve this sound a little bit. Okay, so that's our basic percussive sound. And I'm going to turn off run. I'm just going to hit reset so that everything goes back to step 1. Now I'm going to work on creating a synth voice for this second sequencer. So obviously we need a voltage controlled oscillator. So let's grab a VCO. And here we're going to take CV from strip 1, which is this top row. I'm going to send that into my volts per octave. I need another envelope generator. So let's do a ADSR, and it really doesn't matter which one I use. I'm just going to try this one instead. And I'm going to connect the gate. Oh, yeah, no, gate. Can't use a gate. Have to have a trigger. So you know what? I'm just going to duplicate this Befico one up here. And then I'll reinitialize it. We're going to take trigger to trigger. Then that will connect to the level for channel 2. I'm going to get a filter And let's try the surge filter and use that. So I'm going to send a sawtooth into both the left and the right channels of the surge filter. I'm going to crank my my filter cutoff up a little bit. Then I am going to just take, actually, you know what, I don't even need the right. I'm just going to take the left and send that into the input here. So at this point, we have a working setup, more or less. I'm going to take my attack down, my sustain up, and it'll go a little higher on the release time. And if I hit run, then we should hear a sequence going into channel 2 and then out of the audio interface. Okay, that's boring. It's all the same note. So how do I change that? And the answer is I change the dials. Okay, so very subtle changes work very well, and I can use that, but I can also do some interesting stuff because we have 3 different rows. So, for example, if instead of doing this as a saw wave, what if I set that to a pulse width modulation wave, and then I take CV2, and I'm just going to give it some random values. I am totally pulling these out at random. I don't know what they are. I don't, frankly, need to know what the values are. It's just kind of looking at increasing versus decreasing. So I'm going to use these values, and we're going to send that to the pulse width modulation. So now we're going to have PWM coming from line 2. We're going to have pitch coming from line 1. So I'm going to reset the sequencer. Okay, and that sounds kind of cool. I'm digging this. So I could make a couple other changes here as well. I could very, very easily set up a modulator to control the modulation of the frequency of my filter, and I can use that with my ADSR output. And I think I could also take that and send that to the mix CV for my reverb. So this should give us more or less reverb as I run the sequence. Yeah. All right, so that's kind of cool. I'm digging this. But there is a problem that you can probably tell very quickly. If I hit run, yeah, these 2 sequencers are not in sync. So that's a slight problem, and it's going to be something to really kind of focus on. How do we fix that? The answer is we're going to clock them to the same source. So I'm going to search for a clock module, and we're just going to use the simple clock from JW modules, and I'm going to send that to the tempo input. Then, instead of getting a separate clock divider, I'm just going to grab the divide by 4, and I'm going to send that to the tempo of this first sequencer. So for every 1 pulse that the bottom sequencer receives, this one is going to wait for 4 times that amount of time before it moves on to the next pulse. So that's pretty cool. But I also need to reset and run everything at the same time. So I'm going to look for a button. And we're going to use the big button. And I'm going to take number 1 output and connect that to reset for both of these. And then number 2 output should be down here. Nope. Where are you? Number 2 output. I'm going to send that to run on both of them. So everything's reset, and now if I hit the bottom button, everything should run. Or not. Well, you know, sometimes it's a little fun, so we're just going to set that on run and reset it. And that is just a really basic synthesizer using sequencers. So again, no actual MIDI input. In fact, the only input I have is the clock signal, then the divider that's going into the 2 sequencers.